everyone who just trickled in. Again, my name is Chundan, rhymes with London, if that helps. I'm the med student chair for the research committee. I have Sparsh with us. Yeah, he's also a fellow member of the research committee. And yeah, today we'll be going over VSLO, VSAS that you guys might have all been familiar with or just haven't gotten access from your school. And if you have any questions, we can save it for the end, but I'll just be going through a presentation. So yeah, what is VSLO, VSAS? To start off, VSAS is going to be interchangeable, it's synonymous with VSLO, and they're essentially the same. But yeah, we'll start off with the importance of why aware rotations are important. And I think for one, number one will be, I think, letters of recommendations. And when it comes to applying for residencies, a lot of residency programs really value having letters for recommendations, especially when it comes from in your fourth year and it comes from another, like a residency program institution that you'll be rotating at, because it's the most recent evaluation and it's from also just another residency program. It's just a really good sense of who you are and how competent you are. So that's number one. And then number two would be, oh, sorry. Let me go back. I might have to go through this whole presentation and then. There you go. Also, just in terms of pledging yourself to PM&R in the field, it's doing aware rotations really help you get a good insight into the ins and outs of PM&R, the nicks and crannies, the good and the bad. And every field has the pros and cons to it, and it's especially the cons in a field that you want to be aware of, as if you're going to spend the rest of your life committing to it, essentially. And then with the aware rotations, there are university programs and community programs, and you get to see which hospital system you'd like to prefer better. University programs tend to have more resources, but then community programs are very diverse and have really cool patient pathologies as well. And they're just both different, and you get to kind of explore both and see which one you better fit in. And then also, if you're just sick of the med school where you are and currently reside, you can just go somewhere new. There's always that exciting of just being a nomad and just traveling around. And then lastly, just building connections. PM&R is a very niche, small community, and you'll be meeting people in residence, attending, but I think more importantly, just fellow medical students, even fourth years, that even though you're just rotating and you may not think you'll see them, but I guarantee you'll see them on the interview trail again. And you guys will both match hopefully at the same place, but if not at different places. And because PM&R is such a small community, you guys will probably run into each other, whether it is on Twitter or whether it is at a conference. But like, it's such a small field, and I think you'll just get to meet other people who are interested in the field, and just be friends with everyone, and just a great time and enjoy the journey, even though it is as stressful as it is. Takes some time to smell the roses. So I know we started off with VSLO, VSAS, but essentially with aware rotations, there are VSLO programs and then non-VSLO programs. And it's kind of looks like a random assortment of pictures, but I'll just go through it to kind of sort through how to start your aware rotation process. Would be going on AAPM&R, and you can type in AAPM&R program apps, and they have essentially a list of every single PM&R residency program in the US. Listed out, and also with a hyperlink to their website. And then also, this is very zoomed out, but you can zoom into the US and you can see exactly where they're located in the map of the US. But I think it's a really great way to kind of first start off and kind of targeting your programs that you would like to hopefully rotate at. Every institution is different with how much time is allotted for aware rotations. Some institutions allow 2 months, some 4 months, but essentially, regardless of how much time, I think it's important to kind of pick your tops and do the research. And when you do your research and you go on their website and stumble upon information, I listed out, just me being in Illinois, I listed out a lot of Chicago programs in this PowerPoint. But for Rush University, you click on that hyperlink right here from the AAPM&R residency map, and it'll take you to their website, and you'll go to whatever tab that lets you. They usually have a tab that give the information on doing aware rotations. And essentially you can see right here, it says application through VSAS only. And so That's how you'll know if it's a VSLO/VSAS program or not. And then here is from the website from Schwab here in Chicago as well. And as you can see here, to be offered to do a rate rotation there, you essentially have to apply, and you have to download their application and then email it to the program director. And so you can kind of see that there's, to do an away rotation, there's 2 routes, but it's kind of hard to figure out, when you're on VSLO, like, oh, I don't see a program that I'm interested in, and you're probably wondering, how do you do it? Well, I think the first step is to figure it out and go on the website and do the research, and if it is a VSLO or non-VSLO program. And then one caveat is that on VSLO, and a lot of PM&R residency programs upload their listing and posting at different times. So like right now, I know probably like Northwestern or University of Michigan have posted up, like you can like look at their dates, offerings, and requirements. But then I know Rush University doesn't list their VSLO until 2 or 3 months down the road. And so don't be alarmed if you don't see it. Then you go on their website and it says VSLO. It just probably haven't uploaded it to VSLO yet. It will come. But yeah, first step is figuring out your top programs and doing research if it's a VSLO, non-VSLO program. Okay, so now you're probably wondering, what is required to do an elective rotation, and when do I submit it? Here I put a screenshot of some listings already. So you can see University of Michigan has put on a listing, and it's not, don't be anxious that like, oh, I have to apply right now. Essentially, if you see a red right here, it says it can't be applied at this time, but the reason why they post it is essentially, so you can see the requirements that they have, and it does take some time to kind of gather a requirement, which is why they do it this way. But you can see that you have to have your CV and resume kind of updated. So it's one thing in terms of the time you can do now, and when you have to submit it, work on your CV, get a really nice headshot of yourself. Go to the dentist if you have to, and get teeth cleaning, but regardless, get a nice photo of yourself. Here at University of Michigan, one of the requirements is a personal statement. Some programs do require a personal statement or a letter of interest, or why their program or why PM&R, but essentially, it's a good time now to start actually your personal statement early and kind of just drafting it. And this AMC immunization standardization form, this takes some time in terms of you have to write down all of your up-to-date immunizations and then get it signed by your school. And you could just imagine just not having all of this stuff done and not kind of realizing it. And then when you do have to submit it, you can't submit it because you just have to then work on all of this. So take the time now, get everything organized, so then you can get your application in on time. And I would say when it comes to away rotations, timing is key, and the earlier the better, just because they literally will look at applications first as they come in and roll in. But yeah, so when it comes to University of Michigan, you click learn more, it'll take you to this application requirements page, which has all the listings here. And then when you're here, there is a tab here on the side where it says institution summary. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you'll click on this, and this is what it'll take you to see the important dates. And the important dates meaning it'll tell you when to submit. And this is the first day, March 28th of this year, that you can actually submit to Michigan. So you have now until March 28th to kind of gather your materials, really work on your personal statement. But it's why they do it this way. Yeah, any questions so far? Feel free to raise your hand or chime in. All right, I'll move on. So NPI number, I put this in because it's very specific. I think only 2-3 programs require it. But I added it in because maybe just Northwestern University, Shirley Ryan, just being very prestigious and everyone knows about it. And if you're going to apply to it, something to be aware about. But if you look at their application requirements, they require an NPI number. And you're like, what is an NPI number? It's just, unfortunately, a number that you have to acquire after applying to that you are a healthcare provider, essentially. And the reason why I listed this on here is you have to go to the specific website, fill in this application, and it takes 2 weeks for you to get your number back. And the key thing is it takes 2 weeks. And so it's something that you should do now or earlier before the application requirement date when you have to submit it. Because this actually happened to me where I just did not know about this and I tried submitting it on the day of, and I just actually could not because I had to wait 2 weeks for this darn number. Yeah, so don't make the mistake I did. Get this done early. And then also a lot of other, like I think University of Pittsburgh has some other requirements with like child safety or something. They're very, very unique and niche, but it just kind of goes back to the importance of researching your program, see what they require, and spending the time early on to get all of the documents in order. All right, and then background check, malpractice insurance, housing. So if you go back to requirements, you can see, oh, there's a requirement for malpractice coverage. Let's see, there is proof of health insurance. If we go back to University of Michigan, all right, regardless, some places, so here it says malpractice coverage, but then a lot of institutions require a background check. And you're probably wondering, oh, how do I get this? Where do I go for this? So one, check with your school and email your elective coordinator, check with your school. Oftentimes you can get the background check and malpractice insurance free for them. But then if not, I'll go on and explain it in a little bit about where to find it through AMC. But moving on to housing, I think the best housing option you can do that almost every rotating student has done is rotating room, where essentially it is people who have owned apartments in the areas that you're trying to go into, but they're not there at that time. So they sublet it, and they sublet it at a cheaper price. And you kind of take on that sublet for that time that you're there. And it's typically tailored to med students and traveling nurses. So they're very familiar with people who are in the medicine background, and it's just really easy. But you can get some really good rates going on for the month. If that doesn't work out, the next bet would be Airbnb or Vrbo in terms of trying to figure out housing. But then going back to background checks and malpractice insurance, if you go to this website, highly recommend it if you're in a pinch. It's by AMC. You can go on Google and type in AMC student US pursuing electives US, or you can screenshot this right now if you want. I'll leave it up for a couple seconds. But essentially it'll take you to here, where this is the website itself, and it literally lays out everything in one single page about what you need to do or how to find resources to plan out your electives. And so they have a rotating room link right here. Here's another link about finding housing anywhere for finding really good rates. And then if some institutions require a drug screen, here are some easy companies and resources that you can go to get that done. For malpractice liability insurance, if your school isn't helping you with it, then you can go through them. And unfortunately, there is like a fee, but I think it's like $30 to $50. I forget, but regardless, something to be aware about. And if you are in a pinch, you can go here. For background checks, I use CenturyLink. It was $30 one time, and you can use that background check for every single program that you apply to. But yeah, amazing website. It has all the resources literally laid out for you. All right, now with the away rotations, I talked about a lot of the good and why you should do them. In terms of something to keep in mind, though, that it is expensive. You do have to pay for housing there, not to mention there's going to be cost of food and then transportation in terms of if you have to travel a long way for it. Two would be growing pains in terms of PM&R is not often talked about in medical school. And oftentimes a lot of students haven't done any PM&R rotations before even starting their away rotation. And so there will be some growing pains and doing an away rotations where you're expected to try to essentially be the best you can at a residency program. And the best advice I could say to you is just to be a sponge and just be energetic and just become an enthusiastic and awesome personality and just be who you are. Then just personality, I think, is the most important thing. Just be who you are and enjoy the process. And then in terms of timeline and then availability rotations, again, some places get booked out really quickly, and it just goes back to kind of getting everything on time. And so I've been going back to within reach is also kind of targeting where you, how strong of an applicant you are with the schools, and kind of categorizing, you know, the reach schools, the like you aren't in line with their statistics kind of schools, and then those kind of the slam dunk schools. But yeah, just kind of categorizing that. Any questions so far? Okay, I'll move on. So action items you guys can do right now. Start working on your personal statement. You can start outlining and definitely get that going. I think by March, have a pretty decent draft that you can submit, at least just a 1-page of why PM&R and maybe a little blurb about why that program. Definitely have your CV up to date. Now is definitely the time to just add almost everything you've ever done in med school, and just put it on that piece of paper. Get a really nice photograph of yourself, and yeah, just again, if you have to go get a haircut, dentist cleaning, just get that in order soon. And then some institutions require, I think if you go back to Northwestern, yeah, right here, they require a letter of recommendation. A lot of programs don't, but that's something to do to keep in mind. And something you can plan for now from January and February is to get a letter of recommendations. And you're probably, it's probably going on in your head like, oh, do I need a PM&R letter of rec? You don't have to have a PM&R letter of rec. I had an orthopedic surgeon write a letter of rec for me for VSLO, and that worked out. Just saying I'm just a good student, came on time, love to learn, would be awesome for a rotation essentially. So long story short, yeah, just if you could find an attending or faculty member that can write a letter of recommendation for you specifically for VSLO VSAS, kind of later down the road, you would have that attending send that letter to your home school or your coordinator, and they'll upload it for you. The AMC standardized immunization form, it was that form where you have to write down all of your immunizations and titers and get that approved by your school. It's just one trivial thing that you have to do, but it does take time, where you have to print it out and make an appointment with your school and get that done. But then also going back and researching the program that you're interested in and seeing what special documents or things they require, like such as the NPI number, like for University of Pittsburgh, they have a child safety thing. But regardless, just do the research for that. And that is essentially it. We can open it up to any questions that you guys may have. I hope that was informative. Yeah.
So yeah, this is really for y'all. So if you guys have any questions, we'll kind of open it up to a Q&A. If you don't feel comfortable asking it, you can direct message me or Chandan, and we'd be happy to kind of give our experience or anything that's helpful for y'all really. So floor is your guys.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks so much for this presentation. It was awesome. I just had a quick question. You hear kind of a lot of conflicting advice on how many programs to apply to for each block. And so like you get some people that say like, I applied to a bunch and I got a bunch. And then the ones that I rejected, it kind of looked bad later on. And then you have the people that say like, but if you only apply to one, you might wind up with no rotation. So it's kind of a tough balance. So how did you guys deal with that? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. Yeah, great question. I can tackle it, and then Chandan can give his experience. But so really in my experience, what I felt, and we obviously heard the exact same things. I'm sure subsequent years are going to hear the same things too. In my experience, I think time, just like Chandan kind of hammered that point in, is really important. Having everything in as quickly and as soon as possible right when it opens and applying that first day is crucial. And I think the variability of programs is it's pretty vast. You know, some programs that I was really interested in, they didn't open their VSLO date till late April and even early May. And by then I had already heard back from maybe 1, 2, or even 3 places. So sometimes that kind of puts you in a difficult spot, and each person's different, right? Somebody really might have their dream program that comes out really late. They're willing to risk it. In my opinion, I think it's worth at least securing the away rotations. I did not find applying to several programs, whether that be 10, 12, or however many it may be, just because a lot of your schedule, especially the beginning of 4th year, is in flux, meaning you have all these timelines, right? You have to have all of your ERAS stuff in, you got to have a certain number of letter of recs. So to ensure that, you really want to make sure, oh, I have my PM&R rotation set up earlier. So in my opinion, I think it is good to apply broadly. Rejecting a couple here and there, I don't think is a big difference. Actually, in my case, a place that I had, was unable to because of conflict with schedule that I rejected for an away rotation, they gave me an interview. So I think each person's perspective is unique. So that's kind of where I went with it, but Chandan might have other thoughts.
Yeah, very similar to Sparsh is essentially that they won't hold anything against you if you do reject their offer. I've rejected a handful of offers from places and they still offered interviews, and they understand that scheduling is a conflict. And as Sparsh was saying, that it gets frustrating where, yeah, places can open up in March, other places April, May, and then it's good to have kind of apply in the March ones and like kind of secure it, but then you can let it go. But I think the most important thing is to let it go in a timely manner, and give them a lot of let them know ahead of time. Essentially, don't essentially kind of take that spot and then last minute done in May or June, and then they just kind of looks bad because you're kind of taking that spot away from someone else in a way. But I would just say, just kind of be professional about it as much as you can. But yeah, they won't hold it against you if you do reject it. They understand that that everyone's applying, and it's just one of those things. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, I got a question, Chen, then I'll read it. They said, the person asked, should our personal statement for aways be similar to the personal statement we use for residency, or should they be different? So I guess I can answer that. So I guess in my situation, I had only applied to maybe 1 or 2 that required a personal statement. What you'll find is writing a personal statement this early, it's great because you have kind of a format structure that you might want to use, maybe some things that you want to keep. But I don't know if Chandan can agree or not, but what my personal statement looked like back in March, end of 3rd year compared to where it ended up was 80% different. I think it's perfectly fine to have it be somewhat similar, or if you have a story or something about what drew you to PM&R, having that similar, I think is completely fine. You're going to refine it throughout the process and figure ERAS out. So I don't think that that's a big deal. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, same thing. My personal statement when I submitted it to ERAS was literally a completely different essay. I look back to what I wrote for away rotation. I'm like, I think this is a high school version of myself. But as Sparsh was saying, it's great to start writing now, and kind of reflect on experiences, and you can, I think the earlier you start a personal statement, whether it is for away rotations, but I think it'll help you even more for ERAS, is that you already have something written down. It's so much easier to edit something once it's already written versus to start something. And when you're starting this early, it's awesome. And I think, yeah, it's just, I think the biggest thing is just why PM&R for you right now, and then that will be essentially all your whole ERAS. But the cool thing about with the away rotations is it can be a little bit about why PM&R, but then also half of it is about the institution itself. So you don't have to have a fully fleshed out personal statement in a way.
The next question we have is, for the most part, did you all get the desired opportunity to rotate with your desired programs? So for me, I would say that I did. I think, again, just like not overstating how important it is to get those little things out of the way. You know, I don't know, different home institutions are different. Some have a lot slower timeline when it comes with getting signatures done and stuff like that. If you know, the moment your school that your or program that you're really interested opens up on VSLO, I kind of did a periodic check where every 4 or 5 days I would check and see. And a lot of times they'll give you a lot of leeway where they'll be like, okay, we'll start accepting applications. Like if it opened March 1st, they'll say, we'll start accepting applications April 1st. That gives you plenty of time to, you know, get all the immunization records in. Malpractice insurance is another thing that I can talk about. Another small thing for me that ended up playing a bit of a role with me deciding where I wanted to is the affiliation agreement. Some schools are different with that. My institution has a very strict rule where you cannot rotate at a certain program unless we have an affiliation agreement in place. And sometimes you'd have to apply there without having an affiliation agreement and then try to get it afterwards. So these little tidbits I think are important to kind of sort out as best as you can before the date to start applying opens. Some of these fill up very fast. But for the most part, I think I did get to rotate with a lot of the places that I was interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I got to rotate at all the places I wanted to. I'm dead set on California, and I got to go on all the California rotations I wanted. And so if you guys have any specific questions on California, you can message me later. I'll put my email in the chat. But as far as said, I think timing is key and just getting everything done early. And it's, if you can get your application in on day one, you have a very great chance of getting and securing your away rotations. What I also did is I would also, after a couple of days, send a letter of interest to the program coordinator, where I told them why, even more in depthly, like why I wanted to go rotate there and some more personal reasons. And I don't know how much it helped, but I mean, I got all the places I wanted to rotate, so I have to say yes. But that's, yeah, I recommend doing that.
The next question, Chungman, you can answer this first. David was asking, are there any advantages or disadvantages to doing multiple 2 weeks versus a couple 4-week rotations?
Yeah, so so my opinion, and I think that you should do a 4-week rotation just because I don't think 2 weeks is enough for the program to kind of truly get a sense of who you are. They'll just can be like they're just be a bit more passive about you, and they'll just like, we'll just have another med student come in. But 4 weeks is, you know, like you're there for a month, and like you'll be spending a significant amount of time with the attendings there and the residents there, and they'll just remember you more. So my opinion is to do 4-week rotations. And also it's just, I think it just helps build confidence, because no, like 2 weeks right at the end of it, you kind of get the hang of everything, and then the next 2 weeks you can further impress, you know, and it shows growth. And I think that goes also a long way when it comes to with attendings, versus if you're just for 2 weeks, you kind of have to be like on your A game right off the bat. But yeah, that's, I don't know if there's anything different, but that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you made up. So with the 4 weeks, the thing that I really liked was, one, you really started to feel comfortable with the people, the team. You know, if you're on inpatient rotations, like I really felt like I was a part of the team by, you know, middle of week 2, and in a 2-week rotation, by then you're kind of winding down anyway. I also did a 2-week rotation. I think the difficult part with some of these timelines is knowing, and at least, you know, if it's before application season is in full swing, getting letters of rec. I think the perfect timeline is a 4-week rotation. By middle to end of week 2, you kind of bring up the thought with your attending, like, hey, you know, I'm very interested in getting a letter of recommendation, and kind of asking them, are there things that I can work on? And actively showing that improvement throughout the rotation is a lot easier on a 4-week than it might be a 2-week, especially because, you know, one of the places that I did I did an away rotation at, they make it a point to ask you, you know, what are things that you really want out of this rotation? So being able to show that growth is something they can speak upon in a letter of rec. So I personally liked the 4-week rotation for that sort of longitudinal growth period, and something that they can talk about in a letter of rec as well. The next one is, do programs set academic cutoffs, GPA for landing away rotation? So actually, this is a really good question. I will say there's some that do it for the away rotation. And this is where I would really suggest doing your due diligence, going on each residency website and looking at their program cutoffs. Y'all's situation's different now because of pass fail step one. You know, do I envision them having a step two cutoff? There may be, you know, certain programs that have that, certain that don't. You know, I've heard of situations where people didn't really look at that. They did an away rotation and then didn't end up getting an interview, maybe because they were screened out. I think just doing your due diligence with that research, looking into, are there published cutoffs in any way affiliated with this program, is a good idea before, you know, committing to going somewhere. I don't know if Chandan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just keep echoing what Sparks is saying, is that they do have cutoffs. I had like one program when I was just curious about like how they were selected applicants, was that they won't take you unless you do meet cutoffs. And it is honestly essentially like a like residency interview screen as well, in a way. Like it's like they've already screened you once, like they know that you have the cutoffs for it and the CV for it. But as Sparks was saying, yeah, do the due diligence, see what the cutoffs are, and it is probably, it's going to be harder with how to do it with pass fail. But I don't know. I can't really speak on how to do it this year, because yeah, just unfamiliar territory.
Norris had a question. Should our letter of rec speak about our character / performance in general, or speak about us in relation to PM&R and our interest in PM&R? I don't know if you can tackle that one first.
Yeah, I can talk about it. So I had the letter of rec, the letter writer essentially just talk about my character and how I did on the rotation and what type of medical student I was in general, and that that my personality and skill set and interest would one, translate well to PM&R, and that I would like be a great candidate essentially for PM&R, and essentially more talk about character and performance, and then how it translates to PM&R. And then depending on the letter writer, my letter writer was wanted my input on the letter essentially, and so I just told them to make it as much PM&R geared as possible, and that was that. But essentially, the answer to the question in short would be performance and character quality.
Yeah, just to kind of echo what he said, I think that performance is important, just because, you know, doing an away rotation, the biggest thing you want to show is like the commitment to the field. I think they'll be able to talk about you in relation to PM&R and your interests, in particular with your you know, your letter of rec for residency and ERAS. So. Any other questions or things that we can kind of help? I know it's a tough time right now. I think this time, third year, you're juggling so many hats. You got away rotations, you got personal statement, you got step 2 prep, you got shelf exams. So, you know, I know it's a lot, but if you guys have any questions at all, even if you don't feel comfortable here, I'll throw my email address in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help, and Chandan too. So.
And definitely, yeah, thank you all for making it out, and yeah, taking the time to listen to us and yeah, ask questions.
We're still like, if you guys have questions, feel free. And if you guys need to go, feel free to go. Nothing keeping y'all here. So.
I have a question. It's kind of like an in the weeds type of question. It's about the AAMC immunizations. So basically, like for the Hep B, like I've been talking to people at my school, and it seems like no one really understands. But basically, like once you get the titers, if your titer is above a certain level, you don't have to then get the vaccination series again, right?
Correct. I mean, titer is essentially just seeing if you have the immune system, and you have the essentially your body built up the immune system from your previous vaccinations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, just one more question. Do you feel like having a ways at these programs really helped you get interviews there later on?
Yeah, that's one thing actually I forgot to mention, but essentially it's doing it away gives you an automatic interview. But I put with an asterisk. I mean, I've heard some stories of some people not getting an interview, unfortunately, but I think you have it's the best shot of getting an interview at the program you want. Um, and then again, everyone will remember you when you do interview again with them later. And if they do extend an interview, and it just it just further increases your chance of matching because you're already familiar and they will give you an interview essentially.
Awesome. Thank you. It's good to
Yeah,
hear.
I'll just echo kind of what he said really quickly. I think that the biggest thing is just the familiarity with people. It really comes into play during your interview date. Honestly, my most comfortable interviews are definitely the ones where you know the people, you've gone out there, they see your work ethic. I think that's really important, and just building the connections. So I definitely think if there's a place that you're really interested in, doing an away rotation definitely gives you a good, step ahead relative to somebody who didn't, for example. Well, yeah, we got a couple questions. we can work through them. So,
Yeah, that's my bad.
oh no, you're good.
I was typing those out as you guys were saying your goodbyes, and I was like, oh, I gotta type them out.
No, I'm glad. I mean, that's what we're here for.
Thank you.
We'll work through them.
Yeah.
We'll just go back and forth. Okay, Chandan. So, should we use a letter of rec for VSLO apps when needed that we also plan on using for ERAS? So you can tackle it and then I can.
So I guess you could use the same letter writer, but I wouldn't say the same letter of rec. They're going to be geared for two different things and worded in two different ways. One is just talking about they'll talk about like your med student traits and everything. It's just more so like it's going to be more just worded for VSLO, but when it comes to ERAS, again, it kind of going back to the earlier point was just you want to try to get more letters from your fourth year electives. And so getting a letter of rec now will be helpful for VSLO, but I would then channel the energy and getting another letter of rec later on, or even later down third year, just they want to see more, have the most recent snapshot of who you are essentially. So I would advise, to be honest, not to use the same letter of rec for your VSLO app as and for your ERAS, but then find someone who's later in your third year or on your way rotations. But if you're in a pinch, then yeah, go to the same letter writer and get the letter of rec. But if you having the time now and just try to get another letter later on.
Yeah, I completely agree. With the second one, how many total programs should you apply to, in your opinion, if money or affiliation isn't an issue? I can talk a little bit about this in Chandan too. I think this really relates with both of us. So I think one thing is really just how many you feel comfortable with. Truly, I think at the end of the day, it's how much you can fit in your schedule, but also one thing that I didn't get to talk about is some places just don't really respond. So you'll apply to a lot of places and you just won't hear back anything. You won't hear back that I applied. You won't hear back that you're rejected. You won't hear back that, hey, you're on a wait list. And that in those situations, I feel like you really just got to go out and get that opportunity. So with me, what I found helpful was either emailing the coordinator directly, even calling them. I mean, within limit, just to check in and just introduce yourself. Obviously, just explain your situation. Like, I applied a month ago. I was waiting on hearing a response. I was just wondering what the availability looks like or what the timeline looks like. A lot of times they don't even start reviewing applications, even if it opened in March till May, but you just are left in the dark. So I think in those situations, it's important to just reach out to kind of know where you stand. But in terms of a number, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I know people who have applied over 20. I know people who have applied only 3. It's just however many you can kind of handle, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to Sparsh, just retweet. So.
So Chandan, what is the sweet spot for number of audition rotations? Some people have said do only 3, because if you do more than 3, it'll eat up into your interview season, forcing you to take days off. And some people say do as many as you can to increase your chances, even if you do have to take those days off and here and there during rotations.
Yeah, you can start this one.
Okay. So again, I guess like kind of similar to the second answer, but what I will say is thinking about timeline, at least with how my season panned out, I would say early November, very, very late October. I'd probably say early November all the way to as far as mid-January. I tried to leave open, and that's just kind of how I did it. Every person's situation is different, right? Some people may need letters, a lot more letters, I guess, prior to the start of application season. Some people are like, oh, I have a home PM&R department, so I have 1 letter kind of in the bag. I need 2. So I would say every person's situation is different. I think 3 is a solid number. I would say that, I've heard of people doing 5, 6. I think even one person did 7. So as many as you can handle. I think the only thing that you got to keep in mind, and that is true, is if you do take off more, I would say more than in a month rotation, if you take off more than 3 days, I just don't know if it shows that you're really committed to that program. And that's just my opinion. Some people might disagree. I think anything more than 3 to 4 days, and it's tricky because you'll be on an away rotation and you'll start getting interviews that only have 4 dates available and that only fall within that month. So you got your hands tied. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But I think PM&R interview season roughly, goes around start of November to mid-January.
Yeah, I think just timing with everything is key. And I think 3 is like the ideal number of doing rotation. 1, you just want to do as many as you can financially wise, and also just physically, emotionally, because it can be very taxing. But 3 is the perfect amount, I think, because after the end of my 3rd, I did 4 PM&R rotations. At the end of my 3rd, I was just done. By the time I got to my 4th, I was like, I do not want to be here whatsoever. And it's just so taxing because it is like you have to be on your A game every single day for 4 months, and get there early, stay late. And it's just truly exhausting. But and so with how I did it though is I think most interviews go out mid-October and then November, December. And then as Sparsh said, it doesn't look great if you take too much time away from if you have away rotations in October, November. So I think the latest you should go is October. And so I had 1 away rotation in October, but my situation worked out where I had a lot of time off in November and December, and I just scheduled all my interviews essentially in those 2 months. And so you can do it that way, and to maximize the opportunity of doing the most amount of away rotations and then still getting your interviews in. But I will say that I think at the end of my 4th one, I was just so burnt out, and I think 3 is the ideal number.
And then the other question is, if there's a certain program is your number 1 program, they allow multiple rotations at their site, is it okay or appropriate to do 2 separate rotations at the same institution? For example, doing 1 sub-I in PM&R at the institution and also doing a spine and sports elective at the same. So I could just quickly, I haven't heard of it happening. I don't know if Chandan has. Do you have any experience with someone doing 2 electives at 1? I haven't heard of it, but
I have not heard of it, but I could see the scenario where like you're only able to get a 2-week rotation on an institution, but you want to do the 4 weeks. And so you can do another 2 weeks there, and you can then try to interact with the attendings and program director again, even more for that 2 weeks that you're there. Or you can like try to ask to like spend, if you're doing sports and spine, I guess you can ask. I don't think they have as much say in the program application cycle versus like general rehab, but you can just ask, I guess, take some more time off and spend time in the general rehab. But that's an interesting question. I don't know if you have something more to add.
Yeah, I just haven't heard of it. I'm sure it's possible. I don't think I've heard of someone doing more than 4 weeks. I just think because a lot of times what they'll want to do is and some of these places, they really give preference. Sometimes first dibs goes to their home students, and then everything else is left over. There's some institutions where I encountered that. Others, it's sort of kind of first come, first serve. And maybe if nobody has filled up that 2-week or 4-week rotation that you're interested in, then they might give it to you if it's leftover. So I think it just depends on each situation. Good questions though.
And then if you guys aren't looking at the chat box at all, I think Roxy did post a funding opportunity for away rotations that Representation Rehab does have, and she posted the link to it in the chat, and yeah, something to bookmark. Any other questions? We'll stay on for another like 5 minutes if you guys have any other last minute thoughts, but yeah.
We have all the time in the world. Well, at least I do. Chandan's probably a lot busier than me.
Sounds like fourth year's treating you nice, Sparsh.
It is, man. It's so much better on this side.
Thank you both so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for making it out.